continue this discussion now. Members of Parliament have expressed their support for school uniform policy. Members of the Basic Education Portfolio Committee were yesterday responding to submissions by the SA Human Rights Commission questioning the need for gender-specific uniforms. The Human Rights Commission also questioned whether there is a direct link between school uniforms and improved discipline or indeed academic performance. For more on this, we're joined by Dr. Eileen Carter, who was with the Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape. Dr. Carter, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. And I mean, you answered your own question when you made that argument, right, about whether there is this correlation between school uniforms and discipline or academic performance.
Absolutely. Afternoon, Michelle, and afternoon to your viewers. The Commission really embarked on an in-depth investigation on this matter, and what we wanted to look at through stakeholder engagements and inquiry and further investigations is what is the role of school uniforms when we speak about Section 29 of the Constitution. Now, unfortunately, from a Global South perspective, the research is quite scarce, but what we found is that indeed, school uniforms do have a role to play within the South African context, albeit only for it to be affordable and available. So from our perspective, yes to school uniforms, but let's make them at least not unaffordable to children and their caregivers.
Yeah, and that, you know, it absolutely relates to the issue of affordability, right? Because this is not just a discussion about questioning the need for gender-specific uniforms, but it's also about affordability and whether we've even dealt with the issue of school uniform suppliers and the price gouging that we've seen over many, many years.
Absolutely. The Competition Commission, our sister organization, has played a very key role in this respect. But what we are asking the department is to potentially see whether we can't find a binding cap perhaps every year to what school uniforms should be costing. We have seen prohibitive measures applied in schools' code of conduct where families have to buy a winter uniform, a summer uniform, a blazer, even to the extent of having specific uniforms for great climate of South Africa.
All right, we do apologize for the break in the transmission there to our guest. Dr. Eileen Carter is with the Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape. We're unpacking an incredibly important issue insofar as school uniform policy is concerned. Members of the Basic Education Portfolio Committee yesterday were responding to submissions by the Human Rights Commission questioning this need for gender-specific uniforms. The Commission also questioned whether there is indeed a link between uniforms and improved discipline or academic performance. We're trying to reconnect with Dr. Eileen Carter. It's an incredibly important discussion, especially insofar as the affordability of uniforms is concerned and also the identity of our pupils. And Dr. Carter, it did seem from the answers or the response by members of Parliament that they were quite pro-uniform, but the thing about that is that the Human Rights Commission is not anti-uniform.
I think that's something that we needed to clear up very early in that conversation, to say that there's space for school uniforms in the South African context, because what we made very clear is that for children to wear clothing, maybe their own clothing going to school, there's no chance we can keep up with the Jones and the Januaries. We need to make sure that accessing basic education is as little prohibitive as possible. So what we found is a uniform approach by having children wear the same clothing to school actually assists in their access to basic education. But again, Michelle, we are making very, very clear that it has to be costly and not costly and affordable to the caregivers in this respect.
Yeah, cost effective. And to do that, we need to take ourselves back to why we ever introduced school uniforms, right? It was a way of, you know, taking the pressure off of, as you say, keeping up with the Joneses and the Januaries and focusing on the job at hand. It was not meant to be this expensive and exhaustive exercise.
Absolutely, Michelle. What we saw, though, is that from our research as well, is that the school uniform concept, if we have to go back, is a colonialist and imported concept, but it did find its applicability within the South African context. Now, something that was introduced to, at the end of the day, lessen distraction has now, in fact, in our view, become a distraction, because educators have to spend time in the morning, time in the afternoon to now start policing the bodies of children instead of just focusing on the job at hand.
And when we talk about school uniform, are we also talking about the school's hair policy? Did that form part of the Human Rights Commission submissions to Parliament?
Yes, the appearance policies for us is a big concern. As recent as this morning, we were also alerted that learners are being prevented from going to school because they are not adhering to the strict appearance policies. So that has anything to do with the length of hair, where the learners want to wear trousers or dresses. And what we are saying is, let's get back to the drawing board. We are there to provide them basic education, and anything else should actually be ancillary to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you want to wear pants or a skirt should be neither here nor there. And it's also around, stifling the identity of our children by putting them in these binary boxes. It does appear that our uniform policy in particular, you talk about policing children's bodies, it's not keeping up with society.
That's what we found. So especially when we look at the LGBTIQ plus community, we need to make very sure that vulnerable communities are protected when it comes to these policies. And the policies need to be aligned to the Bill of Rights. So we need to go back to the drawing board, keep up with the times as you indicate, but make sure that the Constitution remains our blueprint. Everything has to be in line with the Constitution and respect and promotion of the rights of the best.
Yeah, I think your message is loud and clear, and I'm very happy that our connection to you, Dr. Carter, lasted for the duration of our discussion. Let me thank you for your time. Dr. Eileen Carter is with the Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape. There still is a lot that needs to be done so that we don't stifle our children's identities and so that the school uniform does what it was meant to do.